This is Coder Radio, episode 323 for August 29th, 2018. Hey everybody, and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's mostly weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and its related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two great sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. Tell you more about those sponsors as this here show goes on. Why me? Thank you for asking. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, who is established, well, on the internet. It's Mr. Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Welcome, Chris, and welcome back from death.
Oh, barely. I think I'm still officially zombie status.
Zombie.
Yeah. I haven't really talked about this on the air, but I got like lifetime sick, like sickest. Couldn't keep anything down for 13 days. Couldn't water, food. Could barely sleep that entire time because I was so sick. Got really dehydrated. Had to go into the ER and get fluted back up and get a whole bunch of 3 different rounds of blood tests. Yeah, it has been, and I tend to be better in the mornings, which I guess it's a type of infection, and I guess it sort of tracks with that. The fever and the side effects get worse in the afternoons. So right about noon when we start this show, I just start getting really sick. And so last week, I think we actually I was on my way into the studio and we had to call off the show. It has been but it's good to be back. How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I've been missing my, Chris Fisher hair fix.
Yeah, I understand. I'll try to send you more selfies when I'm in the hospital.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, we did, because we've been gone for a little while. We missed a few things. The most current thing that Tyler wrote into the show, he said, "Hey, Chris and Michael, I just saw this Windows 95 is available as an Electron app, and it made me think of you. It's Chris's two favorite technologies in one." I'm assuming you saw this Electron app that runs Windows 95?
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
It's certainly something.
It's slow.
It's bad.
Yeah. I mean, if you can make Windows 95 slow, you know what I'm saying? If you can make Win 95 slow, then yeah. Although part of me, I'll tell you, part of me wants to see more of it. I want to see I want to see Windows 3.1.1, old versions of Mac OS, old versions of Linux, and the KDE desktop, 1, GNOME 2, I think this would be a good way to preserve historical software in a way and distribute it as a single executable. What could go wrong?
What could go right, though? Yeah. What is the purpose of this?
I don't know, because you can. I noticed in the release notes, the developer of the project apologizes numerous times for even doing
for
this.
What he's done for the universe.
Yeah. And let's see, I'm assuming we must have some cute follow-up since we gathered.
We have a lot of cute follow-up.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah?
So the realities of capitalism once again come to crush our spirits.
Oh, yeah.
So it turns out that the way I wanted to use Q, they consider requiring, and I want to get the terminology here, so give me a second, a device license per device. Unable to use, in their opinion, the LGPL.
Okay.
And I had numerous calls with reps from Q, and this is just their position. Now, granted, all the reps have an incentive to make a sale, but we were looking at least $80,000+ of license fees. Yes.
Stop it. Just stop.
Yes. Yeah. So it's in fact, somebody tweeted to me who had also looked at Q for his small software company, saying he was surprised we hadn't yet hit the licensing issue. From what I've learned is that their intention in the future is that most things will just be GPL. So the LGPL is going to be something that's phased out little by little. It's all pretty bad. Oh, and they consider a on-device or on a so it's interesting because our use case is a Windows 10 tablet.
Okay.
But because it's a single-use tablet, they consider that a IoT or device installation, not a regular installation.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's problematic, right? Like it's disappointing because guess where we ended up, Chris?
Getting all the way down the Qt path and then realizing just for licensing reasons and financial reasons it don't work.
But what path are we going to ship on?
Well, let's see. .NET?
Yep.
How'd I know?
Yeah, I mean, it's Qt seems to be, I don't know what their financials are. Maybe they're making a lot of money, but they seem to be, grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory, so to speak. Like it really should be easier for a small company. Like I was saying, well, isn't there like a per developer program where I can pay like $100 a month per developer on my team?
Sure.
Isn't there something like that where we could just do this? No. And the answer is just like no. Oh, and when they say it's a monthly price on their website, and this is a PSA and I'm a little annoyed at it, it's not monthly. They expect that all up front.
It's monthly when you divide it by 12.
Right, but you have to pay it all up front. You can't pay it monthly.
Yeah, that's good. So
it's like $4.56 a month per developer per month. But really you have to pay it all at once.
That's classy. Well, that's got to be pretty frustrating. That's got to be like, a real momentum killer.
Well, it was really disappointing. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't really understand how they're making money. Other than like really large businesses like Tesla who are using them,
right? Just
like don't care, right? The shortcut to having pre-developed components is worth the capital cost, I guess. But when you're small, your capital costs, you tend to be your structure is a little different. Right?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
So back onto Windows.
Unfortunately, I mean, I'm currently broadcasting from a Mac. I'm doing my Windows dev on a Mac. I did reach out, by the way, in the interest of fairness, because we got a lot of feedback on this, Chris. I did reach out to the Q company asking if they wanted someone to come on to clarify or refute or in any way defend.
Very good. Very good.
I got a no.
Yeah, they're good.
So.
They're good. You're not worth their time anymore. They got big.
Well, no, I think that's actually the answer, right? Like, we're just not big enough.
Yeah. Well, they're waiting for Elon to call. When Elon launches his podcast, they'll be on that.
Yeah, they'll be on that. So that's where we are.
Yeah. And so back on Windows, which makes this pic that was sent in pretty timely, Roberto shares scoop.sh, which is a command line installer for Windows. So you could say, for example, scoop install curl. That's kind of nice. I played around with something like this when I was using Windows, but I don't think it was scoop.
Yeah, I played around with chocolate, which is similar to this. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Homebrew on Mac. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So there's a third-party package manager for Windows that's...
I don't quite understand why this is necessary when you have the subsystem, though. Because wouldn't you just put an Ubuntu subsystem on there?
And because the subsystem is stupid the way it works. I mean, it doesn't integrate directly with the local file system.
Oh, yeah.
It's in its own little world. The subsystem the Linux subsystem on Windows is actually a tremendous pain in the ass to work with. I'm sorry. This is the Coder Radio. Mike's been driving for 3 hours. Honesty edition.
So Scoop installs programs to your home directory by default, so you don't get the admin pop-ups as you're installing
Which is
packages.
what you want, right? Yeah. On Windows, which is,
Mm-hmm. And it'll do 32 or 64, so that's pretty cool. So that's Scoop, and you can get it at scoop.sh, sent in by Roberto. And I'd actually be really keen as the bee's knees, to learn what other people are using on Windows to do that, like their brew alternatives.
Yeah, such as VMware. Oh, keep going.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh. Yeah, VMware Workstation's a good product. It's not a bad product.
VMware Fusion's also really good on Mac. I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah.
So tell me about your boyfriend, Steve.
Steve writes, he has a travel hack for us. We've been collecting these travel hacks, and I would like some more, coder.show/contact. And Steve wrote in one that I have implemented. So here he says, if you put a small bag of the stuff you want at your seat when you're on the plane, inside your carry-on, then it's easy to get to. So I keep one of these freebie string bags in a compartment in my backpack that has a book, a magazine, an iPad, some snacks, and a water bottle. Now I'm going to pause there. So I was recently on a flight, and while I was sick, which was not ideal, and I just needed a lot of water because I was finally drinking again and moving and holding things down, and I was so thirsty on the flight. Like I just, they just couldn't bring me enough water, and they weren't. That's not their number one job, and I was just smacking myself in the face for not bringing like a couple of snacks and a couple of water bottles once I got through security. So that's what he does. And I kind of adopted this though. So I put my XPS 13 or a Nintendo Switch, whatever, or whatever else, and like some headphones in the top of my travel bag that goes with me on the plane. And I just pull that stuff right out. He says, I just load it up for whatever I'm in the mood for while waiting at the gate. Then when I get to my seat, I pull it out and everything else goes up above in the overhead. He says it saves leg room, avoids the limit of carry-ons, and you have everything you might want. It's a pretty good tip there, Steve. If you got a travel hack tip, let us know. I did sign up for the TSA pre-check and then took my first flight after having gotten approved, and I didn't get TSA pre-check. You don't get it every time. It's not like a guaranteed thing.
Love it.
So yeah, my first flight after I got the pre-check, I didn't get pre-check, and it was So I'm thinking, because I'm just trying to get in, do a couple of quick things, get some work done, and then fly out. Like I had to get back home. It was just this whole thing that had been scheduled. People will know about it soon, but it was they were paying for my trip, so like they bought me a ticket and all that kind of stuff. And I tell you, I was like, you know what I'll do is I'll get myself like a 6 a.m. flight, like a really early flight, and then I'll have the whole damn airport to myself. I'll just saunter in there. I'll saunter over to the gate after I walk through security with my TSA pre-check, and then I'll fly, do my biz, and then fly back and be home by the evening. Boy, was that wrong. Turns out for SeaTac, 5 a.m. is like some of their peak traffic time. And so this airport was freaking slammed, and the security line snaked on for what felt like 25 years. And it was this long, super long security line. The flight was at 100% capacity, so it took forever for everybody to load and unload. It was the exact opposite of what I went into with my expectations. It all went fine, but sometimes you just can't plan for that stuff. So that's why I like these travel hacks, because they help you optimize in areas you do have control over. So if you've got one like Steve, coder.show/contact. I just couldn't believe that. It's like everything was the opposite of what I expected. This is why I travel by RV. It's way simpler. You just go.
That's why I tend to drive, because, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a lot to get into, including reacting to some React. There was some hoopla that came up this week that I tossed into the end of the show, kind of like as a tool, and all of that. So let's take a moment and thank Linux Academy for sponsoring this here Coder Radio program. You go to linuxacademy.com/coders. But I'm going to tell you something. Don't do it right now. If you're listening to the week that we publish, wait until after September 4th. On September 4th, I think to the 27th of September 2018, Linux Academy is running a deal that we've never seen. They've been advertising on this network since 2014. They're offering $2.99 for the entire year. You'll be able to go over Linux Academy for $2.99. Now, there are books that I used to buy to learn this stuff that cost that much. A single book costs that much. And this is an entire training library with everything you need to know about Linux and all of the things that run around Linux. That includes AWS. That includes Azure and OpenStack. And that includes the fundamentals of the Linux file system and developing Python and Ruby, and all of that stuff is in the Linux Academy library. And you can get it for a year for $299 starting on September 4th. I think I've never seen a promo like this, so I wouldn't expect this to come around anytime soon. This is a huge deal for them, and I encourage you to go check it out. It is available to existing users that are in the free community section. And if you've been a subscriber in the past, I believe you can resubscribe with this if you've been considering it. It's a great deal. So when you're ready, go to linuxacademy.com/coders. You can try it out too. You could go sign up for a free 7-day trial right now, kick the tires on the platform, and then on September 4th, head over there and buy the $2.99. It's a really good deal, and I just wanted to pass that along to you, linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Boo-ba-da-doo, boo-ba-da-boo. All right, I've been looking forward to this since I saw you create this doc, I think maybe even last week, and that is reacting to React Native. And you find React pop up in all kinds of places. And it looks like an article you linked to on the Airbnb Engineering and Data Sciences blog talks about their use of React Native and how they're using it to power their mobile stuff. So I am fascinated, sir.
Yeah, so how do we want to take this, right? There's a question about React itself and React Native and cross-platform development. But basically, unless you want to jump in here, Airbnb wrote this, I think, really good series of blog posts about their journey with React Native. And if you don't know, React Native is well, frankly, I mean, Chris, correct me if this is off base, but a cross-platform development framework for iOS and Android and other platforms to develop native-like applications in CSS, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah.
We've talked about it in bits in the past.
We've mentioned it. I mean, long-time listeners will know that I do some work in the Ionic framework, which is basically Ionic is Angular instead of React. But it's like the same thing.
I'll tell you, though, this journey, as you call it, wasn't what I was expecting. You know what I mean? Like, I thought this was going to be like, this is why it's
really?
Great for us.
Okay, so I thought you and I were going to, like, completely disagree.
Well, I didn't know what to expect, but what this really is it's, this is why React Native failed for us, and we're dropping it. We're dropping it. Yeah.
And I have been on a similar journey in why Ionic failed. So you and I feel, and you can tell me if I'm mischaracterizing you, really believe that ultimately it's going to be the web future for client-side development for the most part, right? For simple applications for line of business. It doesn't seem to be the case, though. This whole journey, as you said, by Airbnb was the moving away from React. In fact, Udacity, which is the next thing we have in the reacting to React topic, also has some of the same problems.
Oh yeah. Look
Before
at this.
let's dive into the details, though, if we can, right?
Okay. Okay. This is
Big one.
Right.
Big Papa.
Yeah.
Performance on Android. That's how many times have we all heard Chris cry about scroll views on Android?
Oh yeah.
Right? Lists, or rather, table views on Android.
It's my go-to.
It's your go-to. It's his opening move, right? How about, I have to write a custom component for this anyway. You know, Airbnb in particular, which I thought was very helpful, went into detail that, like, they were doing so much time writing custom components for iOS and Android that what the hell is the point?
Yeah.
Right? Like, in fact, as a native iOS developer myself, I can tell you it is more annoying to write an iOS component that has tie-ins to something like React or Angular, or rather Ionic, than it is to just write the component for iOS in either Swift if I decide that I want to hate myself and drink all night, or Objective-C. And by the way, this CodeTriage is brought to you by Malfoy Gin. Malfoy Gin. It's Italian gin flavored like lemon.
Nice.
Tastes like ass. Enjoy it.
Enjoy with a coder.
I think we were right. Like in 2013, you and I were right. Come on, let's bang the gong for 2013.
That's true. And you know, one of the things they point out in this post is they were able to sort of absorb certain difficulties because of their scale. They say our scale allowed us to take on and solve some difficult problems that smaller companies may not have had time to solve or read money. Making React Native work seamlessly with native is possible but challenging. And so because of their size and their scale and their team, they were able to take on some of those challenges. And in other words, they were able to push this much further than someone like yourself might have been able to because of the scale of their team. And even then, they still had problems.
Right.
Really.
Which is a fancy way to say they could throw a bunch of money at the problem and deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I have been on a similar journey. And I've actually ended back up at, as you call it, Xamarin, as normal people call it, Xamarin.
Right.
Because, you know, people don't want to pay for a double native solution. But web solutions, at least on mobile, just aren't there yet. Right? They're just...
Yeah.
The experience just isn't right. I don't even know what to say. And it's all the soft, tangible stuff that makes me want to vomit every time I listen to an Apple podcast. It's true. Like, things don't load fast enough. It doesn't just, quote unquote, feel good. It's not a good experience. Let me go drive my Tesla and let me go get a beach house and getting a little personal.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind those things.
Yeah, I'm sure it would help the ratings. It's true though to a point, right? Where all right, let me put this more reasonably. The problem with cross-platform right now is you end up in a position of abusing the cross-platform. See, my son is crying.
Yeah,
cross-platform is bringing tears to my son's eyes.
It is very upsetting.
It sacrifices too much of the experience of the application in favor of cheap development time.
So at Udacity, they say that when they introduced React Native to their team, at the time they had one iOS developer, 2 Android devs, 1 PM, and 1 designer. Now, today they have 4 iOS developers, 3 Android devs, a brand new PM, and 1 designer. And they had to go through different designers and design paradigms, and they found it to be a big drain on the team at Udacity too. I didn't expect it because I did not pre-read these stories. I just saw you put them in there, and I actually thought these were going to go in a totally different direction. That's so funny. I thought they were going to come on here and say, React Native has matured. It's been getting better and better, and now that it's sort of stabilized, our team can really learn how to work with it, and we've been able to eke out extra performance, and the Android builds are faster than ever. But it just isn't the case, is it? It's very fast.
Yeah. It's not. And I think the reality is, the mobile market right now, as we sit here in 2018, is so competitive that these little user experience problems or these little hassles with coding end up being a big deal, right? Because if you're Airbnb or any app really, or Udacity, any small company can come up with a better, nicer feeling native app and compete with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you have lots of money. Why not just hire, 4 iOS and 4 Android developers and frankly be done? Like, it doesn't take big teams to do big things anymore.
Udacity also had the issue where some of the features they'd built around in React were having lots of problems. So they would talk about a feature gets prototyped on Android, and then it ships, but it never lands in iOS. And then when it does land in iOS, it's a slightly different version. And then there's bugs between the two, so then it gets removed from the Android app completely. Like it's just not there anymore. And then fast forward 3 months, and it's just completely removed from iOS. And they're like, "But we were using that feature. Like we were using that feature." And so that's when that was the final straw for you to ask. Like, all right.
So where does this leave you, Christy? I mean, you're Mr. Native, right? You've always been kind of a nativist, if I can use that point.
Yeah, sure.
Make iPhone great again.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I wonder where it does leave us. I think it doesn't really change much, to be honest. There's all these different cracks at this particular problem. The core thing everyone wants to solve, write once, run at least 2 places, maybe everywhere. And the technologies are just too different. They're just, the screen sizes, the toolkits, the processors, the resource constraints. A desktop has a power plug into the wall. It's a totally different beast from end to end. Yeah, I really don't see any way through it other than good web apps, because we're just so in this hole now. Like, if we could all snap our fingers and go back to the iPhone release, and then everybody just had an iPhone for a mobile device, I don't think we'd really have this problem. It wouldn't be a good scenario, but we wouldn't have this particular problem. That's never going to happen. That will never happen. So now we are in this problem, and we've got to come up with a solution.
So can I won't fry some bacon, because I know, that's the unfiltered thing. Can I fry some ham, like some thick Canadian bacon?
Sounds good.
I'm sorry. Canadian ham, rather.
Sure.
This could happen tomorrow, in my opinion.
What could?
I still believe in I'm going to use the term HTML5, but I kind of hate that, because it's really, really, really what we want to talk about is web standards, right? ECMAScript, all that good stuff. If Apple and Google, who gives a shit about Microsoft? Apple and Google could cooperate.
Aw.
But they can't, right? Look, the root problem here is that, Apple and Google come together and support some open source project to make a ECMAScript standard web-based technology platform for developing mobile applications. And that would resolve this entire conversation that we've been having for, I don't know, 6 years, right? We started the show in 2012.
Yeah.
So they won't. And I don't know if this is me getting bitter with time, but the reason that this stuff doesn't work correctly is because Apple and Google hate each other, right? They both contribute to WebKit. They both contribute to ECMAScript. If they could just like have a couple beers and sit down and say, we're going to like make this API of standard mobile.
Yeah.
And like Android and iOS are going to be functionally the same, which guess what? They are.
Yeah.
Right. I know Apple people would swear on a stack that they're not, but they are. Right. They're functionally the same.
I'll tell you, the new hair in the sandwich for me that I just can't get over is how things have shifted. I mentioned this maybe before on the show, where in the 80s and in the 90s, everything came out of universities. Mail standards, email servers, how DNS worked, like Unix, it all came out of universities. And it was kind of for the world. Whereas now, it's all coming out of commercial companies. Kubernetes, everything you see now is really coming from Google, Amazon, Apple, those major Silicon Valley type companies. It's all where it comes from. And they're all representing their own conflicting commercial interests. And so what we have instead of is like universities that are creating code for humanity. Wasn't always that clear, but you get my point. Instead, we have companies that are creating code to benefit themselves, which often, thanks to open source licenses or larger market ambitions, also benefits everyone else. And that's why, I think we see this way more often than we used to. Could you imagine the computer industry coming together? Like how would we have even gotten HTTP? How would we even gotten some of these basics? It would have been a mess. Nothing. Yeah, everybody would have had something different.
There's something happening here where there's too much, I don't even know what it is, desire to control, desire to silo things off. That's creating...
You want to reclaim your investment. You've invested people and time into this. Like, you got to get your investment out.
All the big apps, if we're talking about mobile, all the big apps are going to be cross-platform anyway, right? No one's going to invest X millions of dollars to make some, boutique iOS app or boutique Android app. So why not accept reality and just make like a one standard cross-platform toolkit? And sadly, someone has, and their name is Microsoft. Right, like that's what Xamarin is. I mean, it's got lots of problems, and for instance, I recently rediscovered that buttons with image properties on Android in Xamarin Forms still don't work the right way because apparently this is too fucking hard for Microsoft to do.
Love it. Gosh.
But a more cynical look at that would be like Microsoft knows that like Android is not your premier platform, right? Like I somehow feel like we're in a position where whatever Apple dictates is what is peak mobile.
Well, I mean, it is sort of the de facto standard just because Google has failed to execute on so many levels when it comes to Android and building a healthy ecosystem for developers. I mean, look at this crap that Fortnite's going through with the Play Store.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we should talk about that. Can you run me through Fortnite, what they're doing?
Yeah, well, Fortnite wanted to start distributing on Android, and they didn't like the deal they're going to get from Google Play. So they
giving up 30% of your revenue is bad?
Yeah,
what? I wish somebody had said that like 6 years ago.
News to me. And especially when you're, making a free-to-play game, I guess that kind of stuff really matters. And one that's growing like crazy and probably has unbelievable infrastructure costs. So they said, you know what? We'll just distribute the APK. And they worked with various partners and outlets and whatnot to also distribute it. But then it turns out that it was causing security issues and people have had problems. And it's one example of a premier app that is the hot app. It's it's been available on iOS for a while now. And you have this total shit show. You can't go in the main Play store and grab it. But it's more than that. It's how the end users are always back 3 releases on Android. You can usually bet on a semi-modern version of the Play API, but that's as good as it gets. Google has for a 3rd time today, they're announcing a redesign to Wear OS, which sort of brings Google Assistant to the forefront and one swipe access to fitness, and they're revamping notifications. And they're, once again trying to get some traction on the wearable market. But so far, they've really fumbled that. Like Apple Watch is just lapping them.
I have an Apple Watch. It's far better than my Moto 360, but
Yeah, I've bought a few of the Android watches.
I have the Fossil one too.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I hope they get there. I hope they get there because I actually think there's some useful, small little apps people could make.
So I kind of want to drill down into this though. When I look at the whole Fortnite situation, I think about myself railing in the past against Apple's 30% cut. And when I say Apple in this case, I actually mean all the app stores, right? Because Google does the same thing, Microsoft does the same thing. Although, really, who gives a crap about Microsoft? Sorry, guys, you should sponsor the show. I'm teasing. Is that really the problem? Is it that just Google is asking too much money of Fortnite?
Oh, is that? Oh, I'm sure it's more than that.
Right.
That's been the outward. What do you call it? That's been the public explanation of this.
Because Apple very famously recently made a side deal with Microsoft for Office that they're not taking 30%. Right.
I wonder if it's not just we could bypass the Play Store and we don't, and then there's no cut at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
They say in their frequently asked question, they say, avoiding the 30% store tax is part of Epic's motivation. It's a high cost in a world where game developers, 70% must cover all the cost of developing, operating, and supporting their games. And it's disproportionate to the cost of the services that store these, such as payment processing, download bandwidth, and customer service. We're intimately familiar with these costs from our experience of operating Fortnite as a direct-to-customer service on the PC and Mac. Doesn't say why that's not the case on iOS. I guess they just have no option. So on Android,
well, no, I think I think what they're saying is the iOS market. See, I feel like there's something here where they're saying the iOS market is so lucrative that it's not worth trying to buck the train. And by the way, they have no technical way to do that. But I do wonder if there's if we lose some Android users, is that really a big deal?
Yeah. Maybe that's part of it. That could definitely be part of it. They could also be using this as a negotiating tactic with Google to see if Google will get them a 15% or something like that. This could be part of it. And in the meantime,
how about zero? Let me propose something radical. Can I go on a tangent here?
Yeah.
The app stores are making so much money for the platform vendors. Their cut ought to be zero. You get your $100 or $200 fee a year, and that's it.
Interesting. Right, because they bring an immense value to the devices.
Right, or you can charge a credit card processing fee, which is no more than 5%.
Yeah, especially an app like Fortnite. An app like Fortnite could sell some devices.
Right. Your idea is and this argument works much cleaner for Apple. Your mission is to sell newer, you know what? Chris, I was going to do this as a surprise for our second show today, but I'll sneak it in today. I destroyed my iPhone 10.
No.
Yeah, thank you, 2-year-old. And I'm now in the market for a new phone. So we're going to talk about what
bad timing.
And I'm traveling, so I'm going to be in trouble. So we'll talk about it in the next show. But I am basically hooked on spending $800 to $1,000 on a mobile phone.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I don't do the carrier deals, right?
Yeah.
So to tell me that you need 30%, I am not a Fortnite player, but my younger brother is, and apparently you can buy. And forgive me, listeners who play Fortnite, but I guess you can buy costumes. Is that, Chris? Do you know much about Fortnite?
Not really, but I do understand that part of it. Yeah.
Right. You can buy cosmetic things. So let's say you pay $5 to buy a costume in Fortnite. Apple, you do not need 30% of that. Google does not need 30%. Particularly if I'm paying $1,000 for a new iPhone 10.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing is they all want to bring up that services number in the analyst.
Bullshit. That's not a way to, I'm sorry.
I know. App sales should not be counted as services. That's why we see all this crazy ass monetization shit in the App Store. Is because they're trying to bring that services number up. And I think it's a scam. It's a scam to artificially inflate that. And the more kind of casino style in-app purchase games you get, the more that services revenue goes up. And it's just a mix of incentives.
As a small business guy, and I'm sure you feel this. I mean, I don't think you take credit cards. Do you take credit cards at all, Chris?
I don't think so. No.
Well, I have, and I very rarely will. But the maximum I will pay on a credit card transaction even if it's like an Amex, because Amex, for those of you who don't know, is like twice as much as Visa.
Yeah, people hate that.
Will be 5%.
Yeah, true.
The idea that Apple is charging you 30% to do what? Gumroad. Let me give you. Remember CodeJournal from way back when?
Yeah.
They charged me 4.6% or something like that, and they hosted everything, and they handled updates and emailing and downloads and statuses and newsletters and everything.
I remember when they introduced it, part of their explanation for the 30% was, well, we're hosting. We're paying the bandwidth bills for the distributing.
Hosting.
Yeah.
Come on. Yes, games are bigger, but there are not most apps are within the, 1 to 10 megabyte range. Fortnite's probably a couple gigs, but you could host it yourself on S3 for less.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really hold up.
Or, frankly, DigitalOcean with their new block storage product.
do.co/coder. One of the easiest, most straightforward ways to spin up infrastructure. And when you go to do.co/coder, you get a $100 credit, which you can use for 60 days when you sign up with a new account. They have a beautiful, easy-to-use control panel and an API that let you spend more time coding and less time managing the infrastructure. You'll see lots of good example code that you can just start with, or you can write your own because it's all really well documented, very clean. And you can seamlessly get going. You can deploy one-click entire application stack. Say you want to move over to GitLab. That's a one-click deployment. Or if you want to build it all the way up from the bottom up, you can do that too. Deploy the base distribution and then build from there. You can do clustered deployments. And if you need something with a lot of horsepower, they have optimized compute types where you can have tons and tons of RAM, hundreds of gigs of RAM. Or crazy fast, just beautifully fast. Just like people tell me, the best CPUs out there. I actually never. Oh, that's not true. I have used one of their really fancy CPU dedicated rigs when we were setting up our PeerTube instance and wanted to encode just a ton of video for like 48 hours. You go to do.co/coder and you get a $100 credit. And don't worry, they got data centers all over the world, so you got global availability. They have baked-in monitoring and alerting, so that way you get real-time alerts via Slack or email. And you can also have integrated usage points. So when you get to a certain consistent amount of CPU or a consistent amount of network, you can generate alerts on that too. So you can stay on top of how your rigs and make sure that they are fast enough for the workload you have, which makes you look super pro. And then to manage all of it, they have got that great dashboard. They have team management support if you want to work with multiple people. You can resize droplets, upgrade them, or even downgrade them. And they've integrated backups and snapshots too. So you can take backups and snapshots before you do anything cray-cray. It's just a brilliant service. And you can get a $100 credit when you go to do.co/coder. That's do.co/coder. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. do.co/coder. I don't know where this tool came in. I think I found it just looking around the web, or it might have been submitted. I don't remember. It all kind of runs together now. But, a lot of times we get this email, sort of a generic email that comes into the show and says, hey, how do I get started in open source? Like, I kind of want to build a bit of a resume, or I'd like to help out some open source projects, but I just don't even know how to start. Like, how do I even begin that process? And that's where a site called CodeTriage.com comes in. It's free community tools for contributing to open source projects. So that's right there pretty neat. And the way it works is you go into CodeTriage and it lets you pick the repos that you want to help with. So let's say Visual Studio Code, for example. And then they'll periodically, not like spammy, send you the issues that are open. If you get too busy, they have an algorithm that helps back off the issue load so that way you don't get overwhelmed. It's really designed to help you build new skills and a habit of involvement. It's pretty nice. So when you go over there to codetriage.com and take a look around, you'll see, for example, you sign in with your GitHub account, and then you look at the different projects. Like here's Docker, Go, all Angular, all kinds of different stuff on here. You just go YouTube DL's on there, so you can go look at YouTube DL and see what issues they're having. They have 31,000 developers working on it and 3,347 open source repos that are using CodeTriage. So you go in there, you say, all right, I want to triage YouTube DL's issues, or I want to triage their docs. And then you get this email that their algo crafts with links to the issues that you could be working on and helping out with and how to get started. And it makes it all simple and easy. You just click, click, click to get through it all. This is a great way to get your feet wet, great way to build the resume. and a great way to build a habit to be involved with open source projects. CodeTriage.com. Little pick for you there, Mike. What do you think? Fancy, eh? A nice looking site too.
Sounds super fancy.
Yeah, I felt fancy after I found that. I was like, I feel so fancy. I got to put this in the show. That's how I felt. I was like, this is show relief. This is worth it. So our schedule is a little funky for the next few weeks. So we've, especially like when I get sick on the way into the studio. So the best way to make sure you're always getting the latest Coder is coder.show/subscribe. You pick one of your feeds from there, and then you plug that into your podcast catcher. I love Overcast on iOS and Pocket Cast on Android, two of my favorites, but there's lots of good ones. And you just plug it into your favorite one. We got links to some of them right there on the site, coder.show/subscribe, and links to everything we talked about today, including that code triage, is at coder.show/323. Really easy. Super easy. So you can just plug that into your web browser and get all the goodness that we've talked about. Well, what do you think, Mr. Dominic? Is there anything else for us to cover in today's episode?
No, I don't think for this episode, no.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for tuning into this week's show. Go get Mr. Dominic. He's at Dumanuko on the Twitters. Anything else you want to plug?
Go to themadbotter.com. See, I'm so used to Twitter syntax now.
Yeah, I know, right? It infects the mind. Themadbotter.com, coder.show is our website. I'm at Chris LAS. The whole network is at Jupiter Signal. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next week.